Hello,
about you?
Colin.
What about you?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
How are you doing?
Good, good. Can you hear me okay there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. How are you, man?
Good, good. There's some messages in the chat there about people not being able to get into this session.
Into this session. Okay, they have to. If anybody's listening in, guys, I'll dip back out. Whoever has me on speakerphone there, please turn it off.
Can you see in the chat there, Paul?
I can, yeah. I'll have to leave here to check that out, guys. So chat amongst yourselves there.
How are you getting on, Colin?
Very well.
Good.
Congratulations on your nomination and
cheers.
many wins this year.
Cheers. How was your lockdown?
It's good. I have to say that the biggest benefit has really been doing my own work. I can do a lot of work remotely, so it's not a problem. A lot of sessions on Zoom and stuff, but I'm working away with Glenn and Lisa. They may talk about it later on some new projects of theirs. But I've been back in making my own films as a director for the last 18 months, and lockdown's been great for that, being able to get lots of stuff done.
Yeah. Is that editing or prep?
Predominantly editing, stuff I had shot that I've got edited. So I've been making one film on my phone for the last nearly 2.5 years, which I got a huge chunk edited. Still trying to find the voice,
right?
For it, but yeah, no, having fun. So it wasn't such a problem.
What's the concept?
It is called Still Standing Still, and it started by wanting to make something but not sure what, and with very little resources. I thought I can shoot 1 minute every day on my phone, and slowly walking around town, I started to film all the statues in Dublin, including the human statues on Grafton Street.
Right.
So I've been collecting a minute a day for nearly 2.5 years, and now it's coming together in what is the story I'm telling here. So it started to have some deep resonance once lockdown came, because the streets were empty, so I have a bit of a beginning and an end, which are about now, but the rest of it's very much about an internal emotional life, I would say. And the statues tell different stories, and then the statues, I suppose, represent frozenness in time. That's the concept.
Okay, cool.
But what's really going on when you see it, what's really going on is the other moments of life I've captured around the statues, the other human beings around. So yeah, looking forward to finishing that.
Great.
And then I was shooting a film of my own 1 day a week, which got absolutely closed down because of lockdown.
Yeah.
But hopefully in the next couple of months we'll be back on that very small crew and small cast. So called Time to Close.
Okay. So you're kind of experimenting, or it has kind of an experimental feel.
How you doing, boys? I'm back.
All right.
There's a mad echo there, and it's. Let's decipher where that's coming from. Am I on speakers? Sorry about the technical problems, boys and girls. There's always a little bit of teething at the start.
Maybe just if you turn down on the little board there, whatever color, it just might be that your headphones are too loud.
Are you talking to me or?
You.
Okay. So, thanks for joining, everybody, again. There might be a little bit of confusion. Maybe people think that they have to join the video conversation with video. That this is not how it works unless you're speaking. So, you're very welcome along. We're lucky to be joined by Colin this evening. Colin, as I said in the introduction, works in film and television for a long period of time, producing, directing. He's made a number of short films, TV films, and has collaborated with some incredible people, including Glenn and Lisa. And he will be giving our first Screen Skills funded FNI class, which will be online as of next month, which we'll announce shortly. So you're very welcome along, Colin. Thanks a million.
No problem.
So we might kind of, I suppose, just ask you a lot of questions of which I already know the answers to, because I know you quite well. But what's your name and where do you come from?
My name is Colin McKeown. I come from County Armagh. I spent 5 years in the UK, nearly 20 in Belfast as a starting as a runner and a tea boy, then producing and directing at the BBC, and then had my own company called Film for about 10 or 12 years in Belfast, in which we made about 30 short films and a couple of TV series and 3 or 4 feature films. And I've also worked, with development agencies and other producers as script consultant or script editor, and in development positions with people like Northern on Screen or Screen Wales and stuff like that. So I've spent most of my working life working with writers and producers and directors in development.
Okay. So I suppose that the genesis of the idea for this chat is to, I suppose, press the importance of development for scripts, for screenwriting. I mean, not everybody is a Martin McDonagh who does one draft and it gets made by the Hollywood machine. So how, in your experience, how important is it because we all know, it takes a village to raise a child. It's the same thing with a script, right?
Yeah, well, when we're talking about development here, we're talking quite specifically about a professional. We're not talking about a writer working on their own. We're talking quite specifically about a professional stage within the film business that begins with a contract. Yeah, it begins with a contract between the producer and the writer. Regardless of whether that's a writer for hire, that as in it could be an idea the producer had, or even a book they want adapted, or it can be an original idea from a writer. But development is everything that happens from when the producer and the writer sign a contract through to the financing and then production of a film. So we're talking quite specifically about that very professional, business-orientated section of the process of making a film. So, that a contract from a producer, any contract is sort of an agreement between two parties, which sets out the rights and responsibilities of both parties, and a development contract, a writing agreement with a producer will have very clear, specific time schedules in terms of the delivery of certain documents like a treatment, first draft, revisions. They will be specifically dated to say when they are due, and also the payments due for that. So in the context of that, we're talking about, this is the first time when the beginning of what we understand in the film business of collaboration. Yeah, it's a collaborative business. So this is the beginning of the collaboration. It's when at least two people come together, a producer and a writer. And therefore, it's also the beginning of what we call the widening circle. Any project is going to widen from the writer having the idea to talking to a producer, with the director, some script development people, possibly financiers, heads of development in a finance or a state agency, widening out again to sales and distribution people until you widen out to cast, crew, and eventually an audience. So it's a very significant step in the develop in the process and in the development of the story.
Mm-hmm. So, at what point do you enter this equation from a professional point of view?
Well, I've been on all versions of it. I've been involved in creating ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a producer commissioning them, and a lot of my work is in the situation you're asking me about here specifically, which is as a development consultant or a script editor.
Mm-hmm.
So that is this whole process, we have to understand, as a professional part of the film business, is led by the producer. Why? The producer is trying to develop ideas that they can take to market to sell and get made. Yeah. Okay. The producer is leading that. So the producer will have in-house readers, in-house script development people, or they will hire them in. And so on a project with, say, Canderblinks, Glenn and Lisa, I've been working with them from nearly 20 odd years on every single film they've ever made, from their shorts right the way through to the last 3 features and the features going forward. With other companies, you're called in. The project may be at any stage. It could be it's just the beginning of an idea. There's a small outline, or it could be first or second draft of something, and they need some other eyes and ears on it.
Mm. Were you going to say something there, Paul? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, you talked about being on the commissioning side. Like, how much do you learn from actually getting to read other people's scripts? How much do you learn about things like structure and how to actually then help writers improve their applications?
So, the community here with FNI, I imagine that the vast majority of people here are people starting out with shorts, and there's a smaller proportion of the FNI community will be people who may have made 1, maybe 2 features. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when you're in that stage of moving into your first feature, I think the significant thing to think about is that it's still skills and training development for yourself. Whether you're a writer, producer, director, script editor, if it's the first time you're doing it, significant thing to think about is that you're picking up new skills here. Yeah, you're working on new muscles on the first couple of projects you do. Yeah, so if you're 5, 6, 7 films down the line, or as Glenn and Lisa are, 4 films down the line, the way you operate is different. You've learned a lot more. So the big thing, I suppose, to note about the beginning of that is to recognize that that's where you are. You're in a new phase, and it's training and development for yourself. The possibility that the project that you develop gets made is fairly slim. It is still very much winning the lottery. Yeah, you've got to believe in it, but it is still very much.
It could be you, Colin. It could be you. Could be any of us.
Yeah. We've got to believe in it, committed to the idea. But I suppose you got to think that you're doing that development is maintaining the creative voice of the story, the writer, the director, and the producer in the context of taking it to market. Yeah. That's what's going on there. That you're developing a story that you are endeavoring to touch an audience, make an audience feel something, but in the context of taking it to market. Okay. And I suppose the other thing to recognize is vast majority of your time, and the vast majority of my time over the last 30 years has been in development. It's the place where you're going to be spending most of your time. Yeah. It's the in production time. Even if you get up to making 1 film every couple of years, you're still 2 years in development. Yeah. Okay. So you got to be fairly comfortable to go, this is my natural place most of the time. especially as a producer, that your aim is to get things made, but you're going to be spending a high proportion of your time in development. In writers, you're going to be free writing and trying to generate ideas, but in your working life, you will be spending it in development. Yeah. Once it gets to financing and production, you're off the case in most projects. So this is where the writer's going to live most of the time. The director's going to live a bit of their time there, but the producer's going to be spending probably 60-70% of their working life in development.
How can people best make the most of this time and not, I suppose, panic if things aren't going their way? Because I'd imagine there's a sense of kind of time slipping away and the project slipping away. How can you best use that time when in that state of flux or purgatory, and on what's happening with the project?
Well, you hear a very common phrase, development hell. I don't find development hell. It is where I'm spending most of my time. I enjoy working on the story and helping. My job in development is predominantly to help the writer bring out their voice as strong as possible, and to get an idea that comes to market. So you're leading in two tracks. One is the heart of the story. What is this emotional resonance? Why is this writer committed to telling this? Because that's what an audience goes to. The market want audiences. So if you're living in this place of a story you're committed to and emotionally committed to, it's what gets you up on every day to get working on it. I suppose one very simple technique. There's Screen Skill Ireland have a few training places, but there's very little development training. It used to be a bit more 10, 15 years ago, but and most of the people who come into it either through reading or as a hired-in script editor in a company, or even if you think about it in the agencies, not trained. There isn't any sense of training about it. It's picked up on the job. So I suppose what's key to understand there is you're in this collaborative relationship. You want to work with people, especially the writing, producing, directing team need to be on the same page. Are they telling the same story? I often say to writers, audition your producers. Take ownership of it, and like, you want to find out what are they interested in, why did they make films. When you're looking for a producer as a writer, you want to find producers who make films that excite you. You see a lot of fake together for funding purposes, and invariably those relationships fall apart. So
there's a bit of that going on. From I suppose from like script. When is a script finished? Should it ever be finished? What notes should, particularly, in relation to short scripts? What I suppose, what is the best? What is the best a short film script can be?
Well, we'll break that into two separate things. When's it's finished? Never finished, right?
Right.
It's only finished when it's financed, in a sense that it's done that job. Then you have, then the job of it it's far more becomes the director's ownership through the shoot, and then when you get to the edit, the script is out the window and you're rewriting it again. You're absolutely rewriting your story from scratch. But within the business, the film business was born without writers. There weren't writers in the early days of filmmaking. I don't think that's been a real harm to it, because I only turn up for the story, and that comes from a writer. No matter what everybody else brings to it, I turn up for the story that the writer has created. And unfortunately, the truth of it is the documents that we work with, treatments especially, and secondly, scripts are written in a Hollywood system for the purposes of scheduling and budgeting. They are not the natural document that a writer would choose or a director would choose to make a film. They're extremely tightly formatted literally for the purposes of budgeting and scheduling. Yeah. So if you understand that when you are writing in development, you are predominantly writing a document which is communicating to financiers. Yeah. They expect to see it in that format. That industry set format is for those purposes. Yeah. So you got to understand that the language you're using in writing a script is very much formally structured around the business. Yeah.
Mhm.
There are things that you can't do within that, and you got to find your own voice with it. But to come back to the second part of your question, Paul, is, how do you get repeat it again, how do you get the best possible time?
Yeah, I suppose what constitutes a good short script
I always
from
quote David
from
Bowie.
from a funding, I guess, perspective.
Well, I always quote David Bowie. His song "Young Americans" goes, "Play me one damn song that can make me break down and cry." Yeah, that is the only mark of a story. Does this story touch me? Does it, do I have an emotional resonance of this story? That's the only thing that you can achieve. There's tons of technical and sort of polish and skill to it, and then there's your own voice in it. But the only thing that sells is a story that's going to be emotionally resonant. There may be business people who are going, I want a horror movie, or I want a particular genre. You got to understand how the business works. You've got to understand what those executive producers, what those sales and distribution people want. But the truth of the matter is, everybody wants a story that makes you break down and cry. Now that can be a comedy as well. Yeah, it's about feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I always go back and I'm asking. Usually the problem is that the writer isn't clear about why they want to tell it themselves. What is emotionally resonant for them? Because once they know that, then the rest of the pages sing from that. Yeah, so that's usually so. To direct the question about getting financed or funded, say for instance, as in a short scheme, you're going in up against 300 or 400 other applications. You cannot second guess who is reading it, how they're feeling that day, how many of them they are reading in a day. You can do in your script to influence the people who are reading and deciding on it. Yeah, in a short scheme. Yeah, even when you go to an interview with it, there is nothing you can do that's going to influence them other than turn up and in delivering a story which you believe in, has an emotional resonance for yourself. You're a human being, and the audience are human beings. Yeah. So if you got something that's resonating with you emotionally, it will resonate with other people. Okay. Yeah. How big that audience is a different matter. Yeah, and how you get to that, right? But the panel of people in, a reader, a panel of judges on a short scheme, and even the toughest nut, business finance person, if you are singing this song, it's going to hit them in the heart. Yeah, and that's what people go for, because they know that's what an audience goes for, regardless of Avengers, Infinity War, or whatever, the big blockbuster stuff. And the vast majority of us are not working in that world. We're working in with a different type of story. So I would say, the primary thing you're always going for, the producer, writer, and the director are asking themselves, why am I telling this story?
And for writers, that you talked about producers having to find markets, find the audience. To get the attention of a producer, what can writers do in that vein? How can we kind of make ourselves literate in what what producers are looking for, what the market's looking for.
Again, you can't second guess that, right? You know, when I say, you know, producers, what I'm saying there is that you should ask the producer, why do they make films? Why did they start making them? Yeah. Vast majority of producers will not be able to answer the question, what are you looking for? You know, if you ask them that, it's very rare that you'll get a straight answer. If anybody, you know, I've made a straight to DVD horror movie, a really insane gross out comedy, a reasonable budget art house movie, a gentle, you know, film with nobody, no particular cast in it. I go for the story. It doesn't matter about the genre or anything about than that. So again, as a writer, I don't think you can sell. I genuinely believe that only the financiers and the producers buy. They make the action to buy it. Yeah. So therefore, as a writer, you can't actually sell something. You can only sit there and explain your story in the clearest, simple way possible, and then if asked, have a very clear answer about why you want to tell this story. You know, what is the emotional resonance for you? And I separate those two things out, because if your story is coming from your heart, it's going to have it, and the producer and the financiers will tell you what it means for them and what it feels for them. Yeah, you don't pitch your own subtext or your own meaning unless somebody asks you.
Okay. So, I mean, so I'm assuming it benefits nobody to spoof and you know, to spoof in any capacity when you're being grilled if you do get called to interview. I mean, honesty is the best policy, right? In terms of your capabilities, what you know about the subject matter, or you know, some limitations that they may ask in the script. If there's a car chase and you know, and you want to shoot it on a Sunday, and as you know, over the next 4 weeks in Dublin, a lot of those streets are going to be closed because they're pedestrianised. You know, should you say, I don't know, in a lot of circumstances? It seems like common sense, but you know, that kind of trying to answer every question on the essay.
Do you mean in terms of an application or in an interview?
Either or, I guess.
Well, yeah, you're always going to get caught out if you lie. So those are producer questions, usually related to the finance. You know, I suppose, you know, when a writer, producer, and a director go for an interview with the financiers, writers should answer story questions. Yeah, directors should answer the questions which are directly related to their bailiwick of what they're going to choose to do, and anything which has to do with the practicalities, the producer should answer. Yeah, you should divide the team up that they only answer within their bailiwick. Usually, the producer should always lead and then defer to the other people unless it's clearly obvious, right? So, in an issue where you're saying there, you know, a practicality, you know, so I was helping somebody in the last while with a project that was very simple to achieve, except for one scene was really complex, and they went off and they just did the research. Yeah, now that big issue came down, was asked about repeatedly in the interview panel, and they didn't get the commission, and they feel that probably the issue was that they weren't well enough prepared on that, even though they had done a lot of the work. Yeah, you're listening for the what are the usually a panel will set you up some softballs. You know, the first couple of questions are softballs. relax, get into the chat, and then they will focus on what their problems are, and you will hear quite clearly what problems that the financiers have. Is it story? Is it direction? Or is it production practicalities? Very clearly comes up.
We have a question there from Emer Howard. At what stage or what materials should you have when you want to approach a producer to work with? At what stage? Where should you be with things before you approach a producer?
Okay, hi Emer. So the minimum you need to approach a producer is a paragraph, 1 page. Usually I suggest to people that you do the research. You're looking for a producer whose work you like, resonates with you, because you're going to be able to have a conversation with them, and it's likely, if they've made something that you admire and has an emotional resonance for you, that they will probably have some similar taste to you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the key thing to recognize is that at each stage in beginning that relationship, each one purpose, which is a meeting. Okay, so your approach is somehow an introduction, or you try a cold email in which you're giving the title and a one-line summary of your project. You're sending them nothing else, and then you're asking for a meeting to have a talk about it. They may not agree to that meeting. They may say, send me something, and then the only thing you want to send is nothing more than a page. Yeah. So, and the purpose of that page is to get a meeting.
Okay.
At all stages, you're doing a meeting. What was the purpose of that meeting? The purpose of that meeting is to talk a bit more about the story, in order to have a second meeting, which may be to flesh out the story further, flesh out your relationship further. At all stages, these are meetings until you get to a meeting in which the producer goes, we're prepared to go forward with this, we will send you a contract. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's, at any step, the only thing you want is a face-to-face meeting to be able to, interrogate, find out more about them, develop your relationship, and you are telling your story as clearly and simply as possible. Again, leading with the heart. Why does it resonate with you? Hoping that this is going to resonate with the producer. Okay. You've got to understand that producers and development people are reading, hundreds of scripts a year minimum, and meeting, dozens and dozens of writers throughout the year.
Could you talk a bit about your approach as a script editor and what people should look for if they want to get a script editor on board?
Well, I describe my job, I always say my job is to make myself redundant. I'm there to facilitate the team to get the project made, and at that point, I'm redundant. I'm not needed anymore. Also, if I do my job right in helping ask the right questions, it gives the producer, the director, and the writer the tools to be able to polish their project to get it made. Yeah. So you're there at all times. I'm there to ask the right questions of the writer, that they can do the work. Okay. So the biggest thing for producers and directors to recognize is the writer has spent far much more time in this project than anybody else in the team. Yeah. The moment they have it until that meeting you're having with them, 300 and 24/7, the writer is thinking about this idea. Yeah. As a script editor, I may have read it 2 or 3 times, takes maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours, and I have some thinking around that, but I'm not thinking about it all the time. So a producer, a director, and a script editor, or even if someone in the from the financiers has probably spent a day in real time with the project, and the writer has spent a year in it.
So am I right in saying that essentially your job is to help them untangle the cables? Not to, because I think a lot of people don't really understand what that job is. I mean, it's not a co-writer. It's not a, it's not someone that will even give you suggestions for dialogue necessarily, or how to, but just to untangle how to finish the jigsaw, as it were.
So usually it's about clarity and simplicity.
Asking questions.
Usually the writer will think, the writer will think they have it on the page when they don't. It's usually the big thing. There's some scenes missing. And the usual problem is about clarity. Okay, and definitely, I'd say, there's a sense of, development hell is that, that 10 different people give you different types of notes and suggestions. Notes should be about, you're pointing towards what's not working. This isn't clear enough. Yeah, it's because if it's clear, it's it's resonating with you as a reader and as a member of the audience. Yeah, so it's usually asking those big questions of, why do you want to tell this? What's the emotional resonance to you? How does your character demonstrate that? You start with the big broad things like thematic things, and then very clear questions about, what does the character want? What do they need? What is, and the truth of the matter is that the vast majority of stories that we're working with probably illustrate some general societal accepted absolute truth in some way. Yeah, there's a philosophical point you can argue around that, but generally most stories are tending towards to tell us something that we already know, in a surprising, unexpected, and inevitable way. A story for me is surprising and unexpected, but inevitable.
Familiar.
That fit. You get to the end of it, and the thing happens which you didn't expect, and yet in your heart you go, that was absolutely inevitable. It couldn't have gone any other way. And that sort of feeling we have at the end of the story, going, yeah, of course that is for me, that is truth. Yeah, that the story has been truthful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might cut in there and just ask you very briefly before we wrap up, about your experiences working with Glenn and Lisa, how you might how you work with them, or
well, it's a long history. I first met them they were acted in a film that I produced. Then Glenn's background is in graphic design. I'm talking about mid-90s at this point. And then Lisa was writing, and Lisa came in and was in my company Film. Lisa was my first script editor and development person. So a long-standing relationship before we really did other work together. Then they started their own company, and I came in as a consultant in terms of a bit of production and sort of business side, but predominantly within the creative life of the story. And I've worked on every project over the last sort of 18 years, from the shorts through to all of the features, and a number of features which are development that haven't gotten made yet. And we have a clear language. They're fantastic. I love them, and I'm really proud, particularly of good vibrations. And that they're at this particular stage now of their career where it's continuing to grow. I'm really pleased and happy for them, because they're great filmmakers, and we share this understanding of David Bowie's play me a song and make me break down and cry. That's what we're always aiming for. And my job is to ask those big questions. What is this story about? Why are you telling it? And in development, you're working in two places. You work on the micro, minute by minute, beat by beat, line by line on the page, and then you work on the big macro. Yeah, so you're going back and forth all the time from micro and macro. But I would say invariably, any problems in the script are usually at the macro, or at the macro level. They are spinal in terms of the structure, and that impact upon the clarity for the audience. What is the emotional story that's going on?
Okay, we might just wrap it up there.
Thank you very much.
I'm assuming, how can people reach you if they're thinking about maybe acquiring your services?
It's well, I'm in FNI, so you'll be able to find me on the membership of FNI and send a message there, or it's yourman@cmackay.com, at CEEMASCKAY, on Twitter, but I'm sure if they reach out to any of you guys, you can pass on the direct email.
Absolutely, and just from a personal point of view, thanks very much for all your help over the last year. We really appreciate it at FNI. Yeah, thanks a million. We're going to just take a 5-minute break so you can run out and have your cigarette or whatever you're doing, or if you're probably smoking at home, a lot of you if you're smoking. And we'll be back with Glenn and Lisa in about 5 minutes on the next session. Colin, take very good care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Colin.
God bless.
Bye.
Cheers.
See you.